Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're listening to this. If you're here on Twitch or on X, or if you're listening to on a podcast platform, which be sure to follow and share with your friends. I am Mr. Hoosier, and I'm joined by, as always, by Bucket. Bucket, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. These weeks have been coming, and
Oh my God,
I'm loving it with the amazing guests and the people that we've been able to have on this season. It's been a lot of fun. I'm recovering from
you had
a wild weekend.
What do you mean you had a wild weekend? I mean, what did you do?
I'm sober.
Yeah, you are proudly sober.
4+ years now. I had a bachelor for myself.
Oh man.
Well, I didn't throw it, but it was for me. Since I'm finally going.
Oh wait, yeah, you're actually tying the knot.
Yeah, we've been together for a long time, but
finally,
we'll be getting married in a few weeks. So we went and hung out with the buddies, man. We had a good time.
Very nice.
Doing some crazy things. So we had a blast, and it took me a couple days to kind of recover from, even though, again,
I was just saying, I mean, I went and hung out with some of my buddies on Saturday night. Yeah, watching the UFC fights, and I am not able to stay sober like you can. So yeah, I had a fun recovery Sunday. Hadn't done that in a minute. So it does. It sneaks up on you really good.
Do not miss that.
The only smart thing I did was right before going to bed, I popped 2 Tylenol extra strength, and I'm pretty sure that saved me the next morning. So I didn't wake up with a massive headache, but I mean, you live, you learn. Someday I will get to where you are. I'm just not ready to cross that threshold yet in my mind. So
fair enough.
There we go. The only thing I do, I don't drink at home. I don't at all. I'll go like weeks without having anything, but I'm definitely a social drinker, that social butterfly when it comes to that. So I figure most people do it at some point, but I'll get there one day. But so what'd you guys do? Did you go golfing? What was the shenanigans?
We just got out of the Phoenix area, went up north, and stayed at a buddy's cabin. Did all the things you can do in the woods. Got guns, rode on the side-by-sides. We watched the fights, played poker, did all the things, man.
Very nice. Well, that's good. Well, there was some Rocket League this weekend. It sounds like for you and I, we didn't do a very good job of keeping up with it, but
I snuck some in.
Did you?
I had it open a lot, yeah, but it was not as much as a normal.
I did catch Luminosity's run, and I really was crossing my fingers and hoping they're in the finals they were going to be able to do it, but they were not able to. But the team looks really good. I'm very excited for them going forward. They're very close to punching their ticket to the major. G2, I believe, they have punched their ticket into the major now. First NA team to qualify. But luckily for you and I, there's a gentleman on Twitter who does keep up with all this very detailed, and that is Mr. Pulse Bop, the Pulse Bop wrap-up for the weekend. And there was some big news coming out of EU, which there's a lot of people out there who want to just say EU is king. And I don't know, after the way this weekend went, I would say those people need to readjust the way that they're looking at Rocket League. Some big news that came out. Carmine lost in quals to SUH, but they did make it through lowers, so they're continuing on. Moist did not qualify. They didn't make it through. They lost out. Limitless defended SSA again from the EU team, so shout out to Graybeard and them over there. Woo! SSA standing strong. Hopefully they keep going. Gladiators got their first win in APAC. Power went back-to-back in OCE, and I looked, and that does qualify them for the major. Furia beat Complexity in the semis, and Ninjas in Pajamas in the finals to win in SAM. So, I mean, big competition down there in SAM right now. Falcons also went back-to-back in MENA. And this team, M80 3-0'd Swiss, but lost in the quarterfinals. I think we have somebody on that can give us a little more insight of that today, but we'll get to that in here in a second. OG had a great top 4 run. They did look very good. G2 eliminated Gen.G in the semis, which once again, it's like Gen.G comes up against G2 and they can't do it. Like it doesn't work for them. Luminosity, they make a run to the finals. They looked amazing, and G2 once again dominated NA to become Regional 2 champs. So that is your Pulse Pop wrap up. Everything that happened this weekend, big news from play. Yeah, I did you watch any of G2 and Gen G at all?
I didn't. No, that was the one that I was hoping to go back and watch the actual gameplay.
Go back and watch it. I'm not in analytics. I'm not a top ranked Rocket League player, but it just seems like when Gen G comes up against G2, they're flustered. Everything just looks off, and I don't know if it's their play style or how they're attacking. But whatever they have going up until that point, G2 is able just to get rid of it all. I mean, even there was what shot was it? A save by? I think it was a save by Atomic, where he just like reads it. He's chasing the ball from behind, comes off the ceiling, flies down very like perfectly, just right in front of the goal. Like it was nuts. The level of play is fantastic right now, and I think G2 is hopefully are the ones who can finally bring it home for NA against EU. But yeah, that one you need to go back and watch.
That's the thing, man. The competition's stiff up there, and it's really, really cool to see. But there's obviously a few teams that are, just a little bit above the rest.
They are, yeah. They're just above, and for NA right now, it definitely seems to be G2. Gen G does keep beating a lot of people out, and then Luminosity, and I think M80 is right there too, because they're close in points, and hopefully they'll be able to punch in their ticket. But speaking of M80, everybody, we have a very special guest today. It is none other than the coach of M80, Mr. Nick. Nick, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you for the intro.
Dude, thank you for coming on. We're glad to have you here. We love talking to coaches and just hearing about what is going on in the scene. For anybody out there that doesn't know who you are, can you give us a quick rundown of who you are, who you coach for, and a little bit of your Rocket League experience?
Yeah, so I'm Nick. I'm the coach of M80. My other previous rosters, probably the most notable one was Team Queso with Joya Rise Fatira. Then both Dig iterations, one with Jack Yoris and Scrub, and also the one with Evo/Delta, and then Trees and Andy that made the major last season, and Card Kyo and Tander when we were on Furia. So I've been around the block. Also Falcons last year. Forgot about that too. But yeah, I've been around the block, been in a lot of regions. And yeah, I'm back in North America now.
Back in North America, the beautiful region that has a lot of hope and just can't seem to close the deal, it seems like. How are you feeling about the way the season is going right now?
Bittersweet, I guess you could say it, because we've had such a high ceiling, and I think our ceiling's probably the closest to G2. And it hasn't quite come off in the bracket yet. And we sat down and we talked a long time after Regional 2 of why aren't we being able to translate. And I think we got a better idea for Regional 3. And, hopefully pen comes to paper and we're going to be able to book our ticket to Copenhagen.
Yeah, because you guys have had good runs in 1 and 2. Just it just seems to just can't get across the finish line. And right now, where you guys are in the standings, like you're in the hunt, right? You're tied with 4 other teams with 12 points, but you guys are all right on Dignitas's heels, which I think Dig had a rough go this past weekend as well.
Yeah, they went 1 and 3.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys are right there. I had actually kind of forgot you have a vast experience of coaching. I'm not going to lie. I forgot how many different regions you have coached in and all the players that you have coached. I just got to ask this question off the bat. To you, what makes a difference? I mean, your tweet that got us talking was the boot camping stuff. But before we get into that, what is something that just makes a difference between all the different regions that you have seen?
Culture. I mean, it's such an obvious answer, right? But how you interact and how Brazilians practice is not the same to how North Americans practice. And the same professionalism in the Middle East won't be seen in Europe and all those types of things. And I guess to put it easily, like NA is probably the most solo focused. Brazil is typically the hardest working. They're just not really. They don't have all the staff around them. that can actually make them succeed. MENA is a lot of the same thing. It's a lot of talented players, not really the infrastructure, and then Europe has everything kind of combined at the end, where it is just a recipe for success.
It's interesting to hear you say that because we had the president of Deleted XD Gaming on last week, and he was saying from his perspective, when it came to contracts and whatnot, that he didn't want to put hours on his players. He just wants them to go out and have fun. Which we commended him for that. Like, that's awesome. But I did start to think kind of after the episode, like, that doesn't sound like a traditional recipe for having a team actually like go win it all and be at the top.
I don't. I think there's a self-governance as well, because like there's been certain teams that just AFK their hours anyway. So it's like, yeah,
Oh, wait, hang on. Hey, Papa Rizzo, that was to you.
oh god, yo, yeah, that dude has never come off his game. I have him on my friends list too. That dude just sticks at what is it, like 218 hours past 2 weeks. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, because you got. So I mean, Bucket, would you agree? That's kind of what we've noticed in everybody that we have talked to in the last year is that it's culture. There's a lot of how kids are coming up and applying it to the scene. Do you feel that way? Are you reading it the same way?
Yeah, it's like Nick said, I think it's the obvious answer, but it's for a reason. Every single one of these regions has their own, we say see it, the play style, but how did they get to that play style and what draws them to the things and does the dynamic and the things around them, their environment affect them? And Nick, obviously, with his extensive coaching resume here, I knew you had coached a few teams, but I'm looking back. I mean, 2020 of February all the way to now, like a lot of teams, and these teams are um, elite. You've coached some
Elite,
elite
yes.
people in various regions, so that's super interesting to me. What minus the teams and the players and all that, do you have to change up your coaching style because you know the cultures are like that just to get advance in the region that you're currently in, or kind of speak a little bit to how you play that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference in how I talk to an American versus how I talk to a European. Like, I hinted at it with Yoris, where because of his background, where he comes from football and I come from football or soccer, like the manager or coach kind of has responsibility. Him and I can butt heads and we can move on from it afterwards because he grew up as a kid where the coach would yell at you, and it's not necessarily yelling at you, it's yelling at the team to try and get a reaction. Whereas someone like Jack, we didn't necessarily get on as well because Jack came from tennis. It's more individualized sport. You're talking a lot more one-on-one. It's a different relationship with the coach. So those two alone, even in the same region, same team, I'd get two completely different reactions. Where one was motivation, where one was almost kind of going a bit into a shell. And Jack's, I'm sure, grown a little bit as well, and I've also grown a bit as a coach. But it's still that same idea. Like culturally, yeah, with the Brazilians, it was a bit more. How do we have fun? How do we enjoy this? How do we just work, but still enjoy what we're doing? How do we keep the idea that we're going to play beautifully? With the Middle Eastern team, um, it was weird. Like even getting like professionalism within the entire region, where it reminded me a lot of Brazil or South America when I was there. Which that was RLCS, RLCSX. When I joined, no one in the region booked scrims more than a day ahead. Like you'd message like, "Hey, do you want to scrim today?" And it doesn't sound that crazy, but or it sounds crazy, but when these guys are getting paid the salaries they are, man, you get why it's unprofessional. And now South America is somewhat livable for Brazil salaries, but not for North American style. And Middle East is just they have a ton of money, ton of talent, and they don't necessarily have staff that's come up because they haven't been a region long enough. Um, Europeans are a little bit more winning focused. You can kind of say anything to them, and everyone's under the ideology that, like, yeah, it's for the better if we win. North Americans, I probably have to be a little bit more sweet. Um, No, like it sounds weird, but it is true.
No,
I remember.
it makes sense. I've done a lot of like world traveling in my career, and I think that's kind of what I've brought into it with the conversations that we've had on here, is that when it comes to North American players, there's a mindset right now where like they get signed to an org, and I'm just reading this as an outsider, but like they get signed to an org and they think I'm here. Like
Yeah.
I'm here. Why are you expecting me to do more? And it seems like the ones that have had long, actual like good careers are, the ones who bring in that talent of, yeah, I'm here, but I still need to keep working. Like the work's not done. So to hear you say that, it's kind of just realizing that does seem to be what is going on right now in the scene.
Yeah, I mean, there's an epidemic, specifically in North America last season. This season, a lot's changed, but teams just really wouldn't give that much of a damn in scrims. Like, even now, there's still some scrims against certain teams where you're like, yeah, like, we're going to scrim for an hour. We'll get 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 good games, but it's just not the same intensity. Whereas, like, to be honest, I still think scrim should be best of sevens, where I know if I lose 4 games, the scrim's done. I got to go find something else. Whereas it's 2 teams completely pushing their limit, win or lose. Yeah, I think that's better. And unless you want to specifically book an hour block of, okay, both teams are playing purely for improvement, we're going to do necessarily, or we may not necessarily do the smartest things, but we want to test things, go for it. I think that's totally fine. But I think teams should probably separate that and actually talk with each other. But right now, scrims have improved. There's still a lot of teams that do take it 100% serious. Like G2, Genji, Luminosity are the 3 teams that are the hardest ramming and hardest working teams in NA. And I mean, you've seen the payouts as well. So it's like fair play to them. SSG is up there as well. You see their results. Poab has worked incredibly hard. You see their results. A lot of and it's not to say other teams obviously don't work hard, but all the teams at the top are pretty much hardworking teams. And hopefully we're in that category as well if I had 2 guys move over from Europe. So, um, yeah, it definitely is a difference this season, but
Do you
I
feel
still
it's
think there's
different this season just because of all the changes? Like, with it being a completely open qualifier every time around, is it like no one knows really who to scrim, or what? How do you? What's different this season?
I don't know. I think it was also like a lot of teams were just mentally chalked. Like in the winter, right? The amount of teams that mentally got broken because Rise didn't come over. It was like, yeah, like that. It sounds so dumb, but like we had Magic Bear in our Discord because we thought the deal was done, like because of the Rise deal. So
Mhm.
Right.
yeah, no, you can only expect so many things. Assume it was the same with Com and the Optic Discord and all that type of stuff. Like, what do we do? Um, and then you waste a 30-year season, and then some teams stick, but also there's not the same amount of talent in North America as Europe, and that's
Wait,
kind of the
what? No.
it's
Wait,
just true.
wait. No. Come on. Come on. The town in North America is great. What are we talking about here?
It's not as good as Europe.
Oh
Like it's
no.
just not. There's not the same level of players.
Is
I
it is
do
it
think
just is it just game smarts? What is it?
I think it's everything. Like it's funny you said about like how teams come up, because this is always my theory, and I'll stick on this theory. The things that killed North America was NRG and SSG. Like the NRG with Garrett, was it Garrett, Turbo, Justin,
Yep.
or the one iteration before it with Fireburner, and SSG, which was Ruddle's Arsenal, and either Sip or Daniel, killed North America for 2 years or 3 years minimum, because it was 2 teams that didn't play Rocket League. NRG sat in net, and then eventually we exposed them in LA because we were just better. And European teams that have come up have been focused on. You can probably say the newer generation was BDS, which was all pressure based and offense based. NA, you had 2 teams that sat in net and one that demoed and didn't ever pass. And then in Europe, you also had the great like Gale Force / Dig Dynasty, which was all offense passing. it's a completely different mindset where you're imposing the game on your opponents versus we're going to sit in net and counterattack. And it's why so many teams now, even in NA, just keep playing the same like counterattacking meta, and it's boring. And it's really frustrating that a lot of analysts don't know how to actually analyze the game, because you'll see certain teams get a good result and they'll be like, "Man, they play so good," and then you watch it back and they're like, "Damn, they had 3 attacks and they
Yeah.
scored them." And it's like fair enough, like if that's your style and you're gonna die on that, you know,
I feel
not
like you just
every
called out.
play like a prime cheat.
I feel like you just called out my strategy in Rocket League because that's literally what I do. I'm just sitting back waiting for you to make a mistake, and then I'm going to try and take advantage of it. But again,
That's how I play Juice too. Don't worry.
I think that's the point. Is a lot of these other regions, especially, they don't make mistakes when you give them that opportunity, right? Like they're training to bring the game to you and always changing the meta up because I've always said this too. Like it's hard to have those dynasties type teams because someone's going to come up with a strategy to kill that, right? And it
Yeah.
seems like NA will continue to play this NA style, whatever that is, and just who can do that better, and then the other regions come over the top.
Yeah, and like when you look at what's influenced regions, you look at South America, like that. What are they called? Low key, which was Card Caio Tander, I think, or Card and Tander, something like that. It was that Brazilian team. They were this super mechanical, super aggressive team, and then you've seen every South American team ever, bar I guess maybe complexity, and even complexity is quite physical. Just be these hyper aggressive teams. When you look at all the players that come up in MENA, they're all ones players because of Khaled and Ahmad. It's just this idea that that's how they got taught. Fortunately, NA got taught by teams that, in my opinion, don't benefit the region, because I don't think you can be a top team if you sit in that. Like you just don't dominate. You don't win. You don't win the game based on what you do. You win based on your opponents messing up, and it's the wrong mindset. And I think like people want to talk about work ethic. I think the NRG last season, probably just as an example, they worked super hard, but they were working with the wrong formula. So is that them being lazy, or is that them not having the right solution? And people can't necessarily differentiate that because you don't see what goes behind the scenes, and that's totally fair. But when everything goes based on results, it's like a lot of teams do work hard. Like Optic, for example, last season worked pretty damn hard. They just didn't get the results. Even OG worked incredibly hard this offseason. Then they get a 16th, and everyone's like, "What the hell are they doing?" Like NA's lazy. They get a top 4, and it's like, yeah, they stuck with what they believed in, and fair enough. Like their process worked. Did
Right,
they
what they
change what they were
practice,
doing in the
right?
past
Like
2 weeks? No, exactly. They just got the result this time, and people act like it's some crazy change. No, EU just has a better playstyle.
is that so? I've always like you're someone who has a very big breadth of experience when it comes to coaching, right? And I've always kind of wondered, do you feel EU players have a leg up when it comes to just Rocket League because of the tactics and what they've grown up in, if they have soccer in their background or
I
football?
don't know. It's interesting because I had this discussion with Snasky once where when you look at all the sports we idolize as Americans, it's basketball, baseball, football, and it's based around the quarterback. Typically, it's whoever scores the most points in NBA. I don't know the exact position, but it's like LeBron,
The NBA doesn't
Kobe.
play real basketball anymore. We can get
Yeah,
past that.
oh Lord.
yeah. And then baseball is obviously it's not really a team sport. Kinda in defense, but not really, is it? You can either catch the ball in your area or you don't, and then you hit the ball. It's very individualized sports, whereas it feels like Europe is things like football, things like handball. It's a lot more, or even the European basketball teams that then took down the North American teams
Mm-hmm.
were focused on team-based plays. And obviously, the Ronaldo Messi debates happen now, but I still think it's a bit more based on the club versus the actual individuals, whereas North Americans tend to focus on individuals. But that's also my theory on just like how the world works.
No, I think you're spot on with that. Because if we look at something like Rocket League, that's what a lot of players like. it's what a lot of North American fans look at, right? When it comes to any play, like, oh, this guy did it really well. Like this guy is, it's like, but in order for him to do that, X, Y, and Z had to happen. The other two people were a part of that. So it's a culmination of all of it happening right now, not just that one person 1v3ing the other team. So yeah, like there's not, because what was it? I saw someone, I think it was Barkley or somebody had said when it came to basketball that the basketball that we see nowadays is it's all reactionary. It's just do something, hope something happens that benefits you later. Not unlike the basketball in back in the day where it was you were doing something to force one of two things to happen and you were making a decision. Like everybody knew what was going on, not just I'm waiting for this person to see what they do and then I'll try and do something, which now when I think of it to Rocket League, that's how it feels like that's what a lot of people in North America do. It's never actually looking at the field and seeing what's going on, who has the ball, where can I be best served at on with what's going on. Just, I'm going to wait for him to hit the ball, and then I'm going to go up and get it as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as structured.
No.
I think the three teams you're seeing do the best so far, and I think even we do a lot of it, and SSG probably are the other team that do it the most. Have a play style that we execute quite well. I won't say execute perfectly, because if we would, we'd be in more semis and finals, and SSG the same, and Luminosity probably the same as well.
It's funny you guys talk about sports a lot when technically this is a video game, right? And in the video game world, maybe that's the same culturally too. But a lot of video games are me, right, against someone else. So I think the root of sitting in front of your computer or your console or whatever is a solo mindset, and you have to adapt that sports team methodology. And if you don't have that in your everyday life, like you're talking about in North America, where there's a lot of superstars who drive what's going on rather than team-based plays, it just fuels it that way. So I think it's a big combination of both of those things.
Oh yeah, I think you nailed it around the head there. But
yeah, I know what I was talking about.
I think getting to it. So I mean, what sparked the conversation between us was your tweets about boot camping. Everybody, the favorite phrase of the day right now is boot camp. NA doesn't boot camp. That's why they stink. They need to boot camp. You had some you have some opinions on that. Is it boot camping or what needs to happen?
I mean, the playstyle thing is first off, but also like people struggle with understanding things, man. Like we booked a facility and housing for Worlds 21, 22. So this was Dallas, right? We covered the majority of it ourselves. Eventually, Dig paid us back, but we were under the impression we were paying for it ourselves. So, in typical esports fashion, we tried to get kind of as cheap as possible. For 2 weeks, I think it came around to like $6K, and this was pre like really big inflation, right? So
Yeah.
this was at the University of North Texas, which treated us like royalty. It was amazing. But even still, 6K for 2 weeks, and that didn't include plane tickets. That didn't include anything like that. ESL had that covered for Worlds, so we just had to pay for like it was like $100 taxi from University of North Texas down to Fort Worth. So whatever, that's nothing. When you look at North America, Shopify, as far as I know, maybe there's one other one max, have a facility in the East Coast. So like, why would SSG fly their team out to Utah? Why would Gen G fly their team out to LA? Why would Dig fly their team out to LA? Why would TSM fly their team out to? You start to see where I'm going. The majority of NA teams have taken like a 50% salary cut, to be honest, coming into this season, like per player. Like I'd probably say like the 25 to 50% range. Like there's a few that have gone up, and it's usually very in demand, where they've kind of like canceled out the economic state of NA right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a team getting paid 10K a month over the 4 players, so I'm not saying 10K per individual, I'm saying for all 4, the 3 players and the coach, why would an org then invest 6K if you're not realistically going to be a major team? Does it make sense for a team like us where we should be a major team? Also, let's be honest, yours and us have to fly over
Well,
Like
I mean,
you're not gonna put them in the middle of a river or like middle of New Jersey or some shit, right? So
right. Well, kind of like looking at what you're saying, I think like the closest team anybody can look at in recent past, which that org's not even here anymore. And I think that's what raises the questions on economics and where the money's at. But V1 was they had their players all together boot camping. And when they did that, the results were through the roof. But again, that org's not here anymore. So obviously there was some sort of writing on the door. And then also, I mean, can we even call anybody a major team anymore or a major org when it's an open qualifier? I mean,
yeah,
I mean, this past weekend we watched Moist just not even be able to make it. So it's almost like even from I feel like from an org perspective, it's almost like Psionics is just kind of creaking open the door, like, yeah, all you orgs can leave now. We don't we don't want you.
a little bit, but they also did expand their decal stuff. But I get what you mean with
True.
the org thing. Is like Williams are boot camping for the entire split, or Resolve, not Williams anymore. They lost that sponsor. They're boot camping for the entire split, and this next weekend they're gonna sit and watch games for a weekend. And it's like I I get the idea behind boot camping, but there's also some limit where there was a study done, funnily enough, by one of the Resolve guys in 21-22, where it was on average you increased your placement by 45 points or something like that, which this was the old format where it was 30 points per like increase in position.
Right.
So like an eighth to a sixth or a sixth to a fourth or 16th to a 14th, right? Where once you've done two, you go to your average, and once you do three, you improve. When three regionals is the entire split now, like that's a rough gamble to take. And also, you're probably looking at 10 to 15K extra on top of it if your team's not looking in major contention. Like some of these NA teams, like are you really gonna spend like 30 grand a month to not be competitive? Like it's why increase your budget by 30-40%? And also, my thing always is with these content creator orgs in France, they own everything, whereas a lot of these North American companies are venture capital companies because you'll see them post about their investments and stuff. And I think there's also a difference there where I don't know all the details of venture capital, but when you have someone who's buying stake in your company and making your decisions for you, you may not necessarily make all the decisions for the longevity as opposed to like a win now, because that was what like kind of killed esports in the first place was venture capital came in, inflated salaries, and then everyone went, damn, players are getting paid too much. And then another venture capital org would come in and be like, no, 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 we'll pay them higher, double it. Let's win now. This trophy's going to be worth more. Esports is going to explode. And we haven't really seen that on a global level.
That's kind of what I was saying to Bucket over the last coming to the end of last season. Like, because we went to Fort Worth and had a great time. It was fantastic. But we're looking around the arena, and you got the Bronco down there, the Mustang, like Fords everywhere. And I remember looking at Bucket going, "Who are they advertising to?" The 90% of the individuals in this arena can't buy any of this stuff. So
90% of esports fans don't buy anything.
that's true. They sit in front of their computer.
No disposable
Yeah,
income.
exactly. Like they don't, and even if they do, they don't spend it on orgs. It makes no sense.
That's right.
Right, because who we were talking to, I forget who we were talking. I think it might have been when we were talking to Deleted last week, or there was one before that. I think we were talking to Greg. Greg is the one that we were talking to about it, and saying how, yeah, for esports, like for the orgs, the prize pool isn't where they make their money. They need people to buy their merch and all this other stuff, especially like with the way the prize pool was cut this season. Like I'm even pulling it up right now. G2 walks away with 21 grand after this last weekend, but you're looking down at
Orgs get 5%, 10%, 20% max.
oh, that's how much the org is taking. We're kind of curious about that. We've never actually been able to find that out.
It seems like it's different every org.
Or no org takes more than half, as far as I know.
Okay, but yeah, you start getting down if you're not getting past, if you're not taking first or second, then yeah, for the org, like that is pennies for anything that they would have to be shelling out right now. when it comes to salaries. And like you said, if they're running, keeping a building going and paying for that, oh yeah, I can imagine. Like I see why. Would them lowering the age to 13? I mean, you have kids that are in school and everything right now too. So, like, for the NA side, you're not having a kid leave for the weekend to go play Rocket League, and they would have to be there like the week prior. Like, what's your thoughts on that when it comes to lowering the age down to 13?
Terrible.
Terrible.
It's really bad.
He said terrible. I love
Didn't
that.
even sugarcoat it. Just straight
Nope.
terrible. That's what I thought
That's
too.
how it is. Well, that's what's interesting here about your tweet that we saw. When was this? 4 or 5 days ago. You mentioned boot camps and then some other things: historic elements, youth production, infrastructure, financial reasons, and you kind of touched on a couple of those. But is there anything like specific in these other things, youth production, for instance, or the historic elements and infrastructure that you
The
think
historic,
is really? Yeah, go for it.
yeah, I mean, the historic elements was what the team thinks and like how you get taught to play the game. The infrastructure was, it's a lot easier as a European to just leave school or do online school and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like with Nas, for example, right? So I'll use his case. We were expecting to fly him out every 2 weeks over a 6 week period because we'd be, oh, we're auto quelled. He doesn't have to be over here. We'll practice on 100 ping. We'll deal with it. Um, and then we learned about this format. So when everyone else did, by the way. So we had a meeting with his school on the Monday because it got announced on like a Thursday or something or a Wednesday. And he was able to switch online, and that's just what it was. Or even like I was listening to a podcast the other week with like Thierry Henry, and he was like, "Oh yeah, in France, like the 100 best footballers get taken at the age 12, and you just go to an academy, and that's normal."
Yep.
In America, we don't have that. Like I don't know if maybe I'm just underprivileged or something, but like all of our academy stuff was after school. Like even if you were that good, you would go after school. You would go to a private school for the day, and then you would go. And usually those private programs were God knows how much money.
Yep.
I was never good enough at soccer, so I saved my mom and dad there. But it's set up like that. Like it's not weird if a kid wants to go pursue something athletically. In America, it is. Like your school comes first. Like absolutely. So that's where I was saying with infrastructure.
Yeah, the school comes first, and you kind of talk about how he was able to work with the school, and they just shifted him to online. Like, if you wanted to do that in North America, hope your parents make a good grip of money and can figure out how to get you enrolled into something. Even though I think there are some programs out there that are very little cost to no cost, but then again, it's that trade off. Like there is that whole mindset in America and in the U.S. that yeah, you need to go sit in school for 8 hours a day. I know my wife and I were just having this conversation. Like we've had to pull our son out for a couple things like doctor's appointments and whatnot, and her initial reaction was like, I don't want to have to answer to the school because we're going on a week-long vacation here in like 2 weeks, and if we hit too many days. And I was like, I have no problems going and talking to the school. Everything that you have provided me, my son's doing just fine. What do we need to do? Like it's that I will do whatever, but there's not a lot of that here that is, it feels like of parents wanting to do that. But at the same time, everybody's so afraid of this, like I'm going to get in trouble. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Who cares? As long as they still get the education that they need, like it's fine. So what, they miss a recess?
System, man. It is, and I have lots of thoughts on it myself, but I think related to Rocket League and having 13-year-olds able to do something like this, like they have the option to, they don't really have the option to when it comes to the time commitment. And if they do, that's just a whole other level of things they're not ready for at that age, I think. And that's the difficult part.
Yeah, it's especially to get thrusted into this. Like, if you take a 13-year-old who happens to be cracked at the game and has good two decent teammates, and they do make it all the way through, and now all of a sudden they're going to a LAN where we've seen the people who come out for this, the number of people that come out, and now you're gonna thrust them into that. Like, hey, good luck. Here you go. Like that kid has no life experience or how to deal with that. It feels like at this point it's a discredit that, or it's a disservice that Epic is doing for allowing that. Because I feel like there is going to be that one kid that is cracked out of their mind and they do make it that far, and then it's going to be a disaster. And oh my God, I would feel so bad for that kid on social media.
You also legally can't sign a contract at 13. Like, you 14 to, I think it's 17, you can get a parent signature, right? But
Mm-hmm.
13, you just can't sign a contract. There's going to be orgs that take advantage of kids and parents because they just don't know. Like, I remember negotiating with one player where I had to like explain to his mom everything about the contract because I'm like, you obviously, no offense to you, because you just haven't been exposed to it before, but you don't understand anything of what's going on here.
Right.
And you've already been played by one org, so
Oh my God.
I'm not here to do it to you as well. But like, what the hell are you doing here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
can.
right.
Oh, I can't. What's the youngest player the youngest age that you've coached in like
Ooh,
an RLCS setting?
15. It was
15?
Queso, yeah. I think
Mm,
Vatira and Joyo were both 15.
actually, yeah. On that, how was that experience overall? Because I feel like that's the last right now in recent time. That's like a pirates on a boat type experience, right? That we have right now with that team. But Queso was actually like dominating everybody. Tell us about that run.
Well, I think Snowman's probably like the more comparable team, but
Okay.
it was weird. I've known Joyo since I was like 16. Like, how old's he now? He's like 18. I'm 21. So I think I was 15. He was like 12. We were playing in a European bubble league together. So when we teamed, I was like 18. He was like 16, 15 in that age range. Like we had known each other forever. Funnily enough, the first time he ever got GC, he was queuing with me. The first time I ever got
Oh, that's
GC,
a
I was
good thing
queuing
to
with
have
him.
on your tally.
Yeah. And then he made his first regional with me, and then his first major with me as well. But yeah, I think it was different because I was like 18, 19. I was coaching them. They were all 15, 16. We were all young. We were all having fun. We all understood what Europe was struggling with. I think I overdid it a lot as a coach with like overcomplicating things because I was still young. I was still learning. It was still like my second year ever coaching. And I kind of got lucky where I stuck with a young prodigy and then he discovered another one and we just won. And also, those guys just have a completely different mentality because I don't know how much it got spoke about, right? But like Vodafone Giants was the team queso from the season before, so two
Mm-hmm.
thirds of that. Pretty sure they offered Vatira the spot, which was a contract. He turned it down. Right at the end of the offseason, Joyo Rise Vatira all got offered that dig spot with Jack and Yoris before Scrub. So it was
Oh,
like,
dang.
funnily enough, we were all in call when they all got offered the spot individually. Like, hey, do you want the spot? Hey, do you? So for those guys to turn down it when realistically there was individual players making more than us as an entire team, to stick with us and like stick with what we believed in was crazy. So those guys are just three individuals that were always destined for success, and you've seen it now. Joyo is a major MVP and another major grand final. Rise has been in like 3 or 4 grand finals, a world championship grand final. Vatira, multiple major wins, multiple major grand finals. Like those guys just have different mindsets of just wanting to win and doing everything for it. So I got very lucky that the 15 and 16-year-olds I worked with were, man, they were different. They did everything they could. But also I've worked with other 15-year-olds where you can tell they're 15. um, and like I'll even say even with Nas, love him to death. He's 17, but you can definitely tell he's a teenager, and it has nothing to do with his attitude or maturity. But I'm the one who washes the dishes, right? So I love the kid, so I won't complain, and he performs well enough that I can deal with washing the dishes or helping him with grocery shopping.
You can't tell people younger than you that you'll get there with age because they think they're already there a lot. So you just have to be patient. It seems
Yeah, of course.
like.
That's funny.
So we kind of talked about a lot of the problems, right? And one of my philosophies in things that I do is like, okay, it's okay to come with problems, but what about solutions, right? Like come to the table with solutions. And it seems like you kind of went and got some other people, some of your peers together, Sathu and Raw Greg, and came up with some solutions yourselves, or at least talked about the problems to kind of come up with some of these things that could happen. Or do you have solutions? Do you have things you're like, if this, then this would happen?
Yeah, I mean, I also think North America is going to be in a golden period very soon. Like, I I sat down, and funnily enough, I was sitting down with Jack, apparently Jack, and we looked over this of like RLCSX World Championships or the COVID Championships, whatever the hell they were. Like all the teams in NA, like the majority of them were still at the top level players. And in EU, I think there was like maybe like 5 or 6 and out of the 6 teams where it's like, oh yeah, those guys still make lands. And they just get shuffled out. Luckily in NA, I think through the first 2 regionals, we've had 17 new players make regionals. And that's a thing in Europe. And Jack and I were debating it. And he's like, yeah, but how many of these players are going to be top players? And not all of them do. Like we've never had new players in the 16 to probably 6 range. So you're not making lands, but you're contending. You can take series off. It's been the same players for 2 years, man. Like that's not a good thing. And finally, we're having all these new young talents come through, and I think there's a lot of good people in the scene where, like, I know Sathu has taken a lot of young players under his belt and done replays with them, even if he has no intention of trying them out. I think I've done quite a bit where, yeah, I'll just happily try out any young player that looks decent and be like, okay, I'll learn their mentality. And even if I can't give you a spot now, if I can help you down the line, I want to do that. And there's a lot of players even from other regions that message me, even on things like contract help, and it's like that's important as well. That I think we're finally getting to this era where there's a lot of new hungry faces, and it's just about how you kind of teach them and mold them and give them this mindset and good examples to look up to where I mean, like, let's keep it real. The majority of these pros were looking up to players like Squishy, which the most famous thing about Squishy was the 10 commandments of scrims, where if you demo him, he fucking calls it. So it's like I think we're getting a lot more like luminosity is the definition of a great team. Not necessarily the best individuals in NA. Because Cheese is still developing. He's a great kid, still developing.
Yeah, he had a
Magic
huge
Bear,
weekend.
yeah. And I mean, he deserves it, man, for how he acts and how he's come through. Like, my friend group was the one that discovered Cheese when he was still on Switch, when he came over, because we were like, who the hell is this kid putting 180 past to? And one of our best friends is Hockey on TSM. And he was cooking Hockey in screen shares. And we were like, okay, we got to get him in the Discord because this kid's going to be good. And we've done the same with a few other players. And it's like that dude is just a ball of happiness. Like he's a golden retriever of a person. And it's amazing. Like him and Lan is like, okay, you're like, calm down, she's like, you can only deal with him somewhat. And I love him. He's a great kid. But those are the type of people that deserve success. Magic's worked incredibly hard and been at this like 7 through 10 level for so long, and they deserve it. Like they've worked hard enough to earn what they're getting now. And I think those are the types of examples you need to look up to. Or even Daniel. Daniel was putting like 180 past 2 for months and years to be at the top level. And yeah, he can be a bit over the top in private, but you know, he's 15, 16.
Wait, hang on. He actually talks in private?
Oh yeah. He's a lot more outgoing in private.
Oh man, I think that was my favorite from the space station videos when you would hear him start barking back. And it's like, all right, this kid's got it. He's there. He just needs to feel a little more comfortable in his situation, and it's gonna come out. So
Yeah. Daniel's a good kid, especially 1-on-1. He's super intelligent. He works really hard. He's quite well spoken. You know, like that's someone who deserves success. Atomic is one of the quietest guys, but he works super hard. Beastman, the same thing. They don't talk much. They just get stuff done.
So you've been a top level player, and you've been around a lot of top level talent. You shake your head, no, but I mean,
I was never a top level player. I was like B plus. I wasn't good.
Just take the compliment.
Funnily enough, I beat Daniel on his rank A promotion series back in
Whoa.
6
There you
minutes,
go.
like 2021 or something.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
he's
I'm Nick.
fast.
I got Joyo to GC, and I've beaten Daniel. So what else do you got on your resume? But so you've seen like you've seen these players, and you've done replay reviews, you've talked with them. What makes the difference? I know, like, we talk maturity and everything, but when it comes to gameplay, just is it? Do they just read it faster? Is it the mechanics? Like, just what is it?
Are you saying like what helps them become who they are? Like
Right.
what keeps them at the top? Like I think it's a willingness to experiment and willingness to change. Like so many of these top level players, they push the mechanical boundaries. But even for example, like we'll talk about with our team, like we used theory based Rocket League where we tried to do something based on a theory for 2 months when we first formed in. I think we won about 6 scrims in 3 months. And I like if that team wanted to throw in the towel, I wouldn't have been happy, but I get it. Like, but we didn't. Like, we really stuck through it. They worked as hard as possible, and it's like if we commit 100% and it doesn't work, hands up, we'll figure something else out. And they were mature enough to do that and stick through us and stick by me and JC, and then we changed our playstyle and we beat SSG the next day, and then we went on break and tried to figure out the season start date, and we went from there. And, like these guys had crazy work ethic on 100 ping, which is really tilting to play on.
Yes.
Especially with so many of the teams in the NA still being in like the counter-attack demo heavy meta, it's like, yeah, we just lose to those teams on 100 pinks. It's like you can't avoid it.
You talk about the demo attack method. I mean, it works, but we haven't been able to see it actually get someone all the way to the top yet. So that is definitely true. It's just interesting. Like, I always kind of wondered when it came to like just those top players like that. Just can they even explain what they see over like from somebody else? Like, are they just reading it that much faster?
I mean, a lot of it's just instinct. I think like they understand it, like they can do it and they can probably explain it back of like, oh yeah, sometimes like I could see this, but other times it's like, yeah, I just read it. Okay. Not fair enough. You just read it.
I just
Okay.
read it. It's just there. I just see it. That I wish I could see it that clearly, but I just don't. Like, you see some players that do things, and you're just like, how did you know? How did you know that was going to be there? Because if I would have thrown my car just there, it wasn't going to happen. Bucket, what do you like? Your brain's cooking over there. I know you're taking notes as always.
Yeah, always taking notes, trying to keep up with what's going on, but also I think there's a lot of things that you can kind of speak to with the individual players and the team aspect, but is it you got to get the right group of guys first, or can you mold these guys yourselves once you have them? Like, if you just were given a random trio of the top 100 players, could you get them to the top as a team? Right? Like, does the coach have that ability, or do you have to first have the right formula?
Probably a mix. Like I think I could get them quite far, but I don't think it's just like a miracle end all be all. So it's like I funnily enough, I had one of my friends basically say the only reason I've ever had success as a coach is because I always pick up these ranked grinders. Like that's it. So I was like, damn, okay. You know what? Fair enough. That's not a bad take because you look through all the rosters, right? Like, ever since Queso, Vachira was a ranked grinder. Joya was as well. Then Dig, Joris and Jack came up through ones in ranked grinding. Then I had Evo, who's a ranked grinder. Um, Falcons, I got lucky with they're all ranked grinders. Nupo was a ranked grinder. Now I got Nas, and Nas is the full ranked player as well. So I don't know. I like that mindset of like twos are do or die. Like I like those passionate people because I think I'm just passionate about the game in general.
You
It's
have
like
to
when I
be.
looked up, yeah, and like when I looked up to coaches, I always looked up to Mourinho because of how he was able to galvanize the team and get everyone on the same page and mindset. And it was us against the world, and every game's do or die. And it was a bit more of a war mentality than a football mentality. And it was so interesting to me. Then I've started studying other coaches and learning about them, but I don't think I could just pick any three players. I think I need three players that are open and willing to listen and change and be communicative. And
That's right.
you can teach those things because whenever we've tried out young players, they're not typically the most open to speaking about things and things that are bothering them, and that's fine because they're kids. But you learn that and you teach them and you give them the space to actually be able to talk.
Yeah, coachability. It's a
Yes,
huge thing.
coachability. That's the word right there. Is coachability. I think anybody who has come up in any sort of sport, exec work, like it doesn't matter in the world. You got to be coachable. You need to be able to listen to people who have been there before and understand that they're gonna help you get there. And it takes some time. It doesn't always happen overnight.
But you also don't want to take away from their individual play styles or their individual skill sets, right? Like it's one thing to buy into a program and say, this is how we do things, you're going to do things this way. It's another to for the team to be able to expand those things too. And I think that's what these good teams are able to do. Like you're talking about the team dynamic with Luminosity and the way they've been able to bring in a new player, but continue to expand their whole, you know, their ceiling and their tiers and all that. And I think you guys are doing it. I think a lot of the switching and shuffling this offseason spoke to
Oh yeah.
the coaches that are out there and the managers and the people who are kind of helping push these things up the hill. And you guys are doing a great job of keeping everyone kind of in line.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at all these like French orgs that people talk about, like when you look at Vitality, there's 20 people walking around the facility as they play, man. Like that is they are built for success. It's the same thing with K Corp, which I know they have a bunch of people there, but also Kameto is there for like every single regional. That dude cares, you know. Like General Mates, I assume is the same thing. I haven't seen enough of their facility, and I don't know enough about the org, but the way they strike me is very much the same. And BDS is probably the richest organization in Rocket League, probably besides Falcons. And Falcons is even the same thing, where like when I talked to them a lot, it was okay, how do we build the infrastructure for the long term? And a lot of long term planning for them because they have the money, but they didn't necessarily understand how to get there. And it's not like they lack the passion. I think NA is in a similar spot where okay, now they're starting to get it. Okay, this is the top level coaches are staying as top level coaches, and some of the friend coaches are getting phased out. I mean, even Greg and I had a heated discussion the one day because called Optic a friendship team because they didn't kick someone after they half kicked Magic. And I said, yeah, from my perspective,
Ooh.
you guys would have been better with a move. And he was like, yeah, but you don't see everything behind the scenes. I said, you know what, fair enough. And then they got second in NA the next split. So that kind of made me eat my words. But from an outside perspective, it's the same thing that I said before. Like, we can only judge based on results because I didn't talk with any of the guys. I just saw them get a 16th, 16th, and scam a fourth place in the third regional before we made the regional with the player they turned down. So, but also, I got fired 2 weeks later, and they made the major. So, you know what? Fair enough. Like, it's obviously worked out for them.
Oh,
And
how
they
the
set
turns
themselves up for
table.
the one. Yeah, I got cooked. I got cooked. But
Oh no,
yeah.
that's fine. But it's good to hear it. Like I, there was something that you said in there, and it was kind of it just has stuck in my brain now. When it comes to like the friend coaches that we have seen, especially like some of the higher, like you see some people get picked up, and we all kind of look like, all right, well let's see how this goes, but also wondering like, is there really any value being added? Like, is there a mind shift change of not every? Is it finally starting to come out that not every player can be a coach?
Yeah, but also, just because you're a player doesn't mean you're a good coach, but also just because you weren't a player doesn't mean you're a good coach. Like, it's the
That's
same
true.
thing. Like, there's certain good coaches that fit in both, and there's certain really bad coaches that fit in both as well. So, I don't know. It's always hard to tell. Like, I think there's probably 3 or 4 really elite non-player coaches right off the top of my head, which maybe I'm forgetting some, so I don't really want to list the names. But like Xperi was never a top player, Guaysum was never a top player, and Complexity and Liquid and those teams were absolutely immaculate. Even Achieves now with Pirates on a Boat was never a player; he was a caster, but he still does extremely well. Eversax was never a pro, but his K Corp won a major, so it's like you don't necessarily need to have been a player. And Mew is probably, dude makes back-to-back world championships and leaves the game. Like that dude never. Yeah, that dude was like diamond,
He
but he
said,
was
"I'm
one of the
out."
best mental coaches. Yeah, he was a League of Legends coach, and now is again. He's brilliant. He's brilliant at what he does.
I'm
So I don't think it's necessarily fair to generalize either way.
Yeah, coaching is its own category, right? Like in
It's an art.
every aspect, it's its own career, job, skill set, whatever you want to call it. You have to be able to do that at this high level, and you can do it at different levels, right? Like you could be a t-ball coach and then a major league coach, but um, it helps when you've been around the scene in order to start speaking about that. And then if you have those intangible things as a coach, and we see the same names over and over, and that's how you know uh, that you guys are at that elite level.
Yeah, I think that's quite fair.
Man, well, so how do you feel the season is going? I know a lot of changes were dropped on the entire community at the last minute. But this is looking very far into the future. How's this going, and how do you see it going forward?
M80 or as a whole, as an esport.
Let's start with M80.
Um, hmm, close. I think that's probably the one word to describe it is just close.
You guys are
We've been
there.
very yeah. And I still have 100% faith we'll go to Copenhagen. I still have 100% faith that if any team's going to beat G2 right now, it's us because we've shown our ceiling. Um, and I believe it. So,
Dang, I like it.
yeah, yeah. I think that
It's hard
needs
to
to be our
disagree.
level in bracket, and I think we're one of those teams that once we put it together in bracket once, it's going to happen like, for the rest of the season. Because also like, I mean, when I look at teams like my favorite one was Astralis. Astralis was the dynasty that became in CS:GO, which was even better than the Gale Force dynasty in Rocket League. Like, they were second place artists. They never won. Then they won once, and then they just don't stop winning. Because when you have everything else, and it's just getting it over the mental hoop once. It's you just get it once, and
Yep.
it's done. And you can't compete with that. That's why, like, funnily enough, I was talking to Jack about this as well. Like, you'd rather have a team with players that choke, like chokers per se, because once they get over the line once, like, they won't do it again. Like, everyone talks about Queso, right? Where our game 5, game 7 ice, right? Queso's field.
Yep.
Do you know how our season started in game 5s?
I don't remember.
0-7.
Yeah, you guys.
0-7. 0-7. We didn't win a single game 5 or game 7. We bottled it over and over and over.
Yeah,
And we had
because
a
that became
17
the
game
thing. It
win.
was like you saw him get there, and you're like, "This is going to 7. We're going to game 7. Don't worry about it."
Well, yeah, but that's when we started winning them. Once we started winning them once, we won 17 straight or something stupid like that.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a
But
mental
people don't
thing to
talk about
break
the
through.
7. People don't talk about the 7 we lost in a row beforehand, where we were chokers, like because we were a young team. But once you get it once, man, we beat Misfits on game 5. I think it was in groups, and then we went on to beat Dig, and we actually won that regional. So once we got it once, we were good. But people don't think about it like that. They think you can't change or grow, and it's really frustrating. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
once you have success, everybody kind of forgets about what it took to get there and the struggles that happened. But yeah, once you have that, once it clicks, it clicks. Like it's just there. Got it. Like, oh, now it makes sense now, and I am not gonna happen again. Do you feel that if we had like the original format, that there's a chance that it would click earlier for you guys, or no?
I think it's on us more so than anything.
Okay.
Because also, if we had the original format, I don't think Mass would be here.
Oh, okay.
Funnily enough, he just sent a picture in our group chat where it was just me talking.
There you
That's why I
go.
was laughing. But yeah, I don't think it would have clicked as soon because also we wouldn't have all been in person as much. Nas would have been flying back and forth. So there's pros and cons.
Okay. But going forward for the esport as a whole,
Yeah.
is it going in the? I can tell by your reaction there. You got a comment or two, which We are here to listen to. But yeah, where do you think it's going?
I don't know. I think this was a transitional year. Most of the pros knew two splits were coming. We thought we were gonna have wild cards for majors as well as worlds, so that was like, oh shit, like 8 spots just got cut for every single major. So we were thinking NA would have 6 or 7 spots, not 4, which is rough.
It's a big
Um,
difference.
Yeah.
but I think it's a transitional year, and I think there's a part of us where, yeah, if we had that communication, we would have been like, okay, we can deal with it. Because I don't think the prize pool was that big of a deal. I don't think 2 splits was that big of a deal, especially if you have third-party tournaments, which, like, this is speaking from like our perspective, we have no clue. So usually, like, most people be like, oh, we'll hit it. So I have no clue if there's gonna be third-party lands. I assume there will be a Gamers 8 because of the Esports World Cup, but yeah, we can only really guess and hope right now. Um, but when we were told about things, we were often cool with it. I think the fact Blast got signed on 2 weeks before the actual regional started, like, you know,
Wait, so it wasn't that the response was just delayed coming out. You're saying like Blast was actually signed like just 2 weeks before that announcement came out?
I think maybe 2 3 weeks, yeah. Like, and
Whoa.
I think Resolve already commented on this, so it's okay for me to say. But we were very much under the impression that everything was going to be ran through EFG, so ESL Faceit Group again, like every other season had been, and
Mm-hmm.
then it wasn't. But also, Blast has a contract till 2029 now. So, do I have total faith in them? No, not as much as ESL, and I don't think that'll really ever change because Blast is not backed by an entire country. So, that's just the truth of it. Where when you're backed by an entire country, you get a little bit more leniency for good or for bad.
Right.
But we've never had this long of a contract, so they can plan things longer in the future. Whereas this year, like, I think they just need to get something out. Is it the worst format in the world? No. It's the only thing I'd really complain about seating and the fact there's no breaks. Yeah, I think it would have been good if halfway through the split they added, like, if they threw in a week break, maybe after regional too, and they were just like, okay, breathe. Or maybe they would switch up the weeks where teams get breaks or regions get breaks, so maybe not all the regions are as aligned as they are, so
Hmm.
you don't have to watch NA, South America, OC, APAC, SSA, and so there's a region of South
It's a
America. If I
lot,
didn't
even
say,
for the hardcore
all in the
fan
same
to
day.
watch
It's
it.
Yeah, you
crazy,
can't
man.
It's
you can't keep
impossible.
up with it.
Yeah, it sucks. It's genuinely like go, 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 go. It's like fucking hell, man. I don't understand how anyone keeps up with it.
Do you
And
think
I
the
do it
big break
so
like
well.
we had is a good thing, or should it be a little? I mean, I know everybody. I think everybody was asking for some sort of a break, but the fact that it's right now shaped up to be as long again, I feel like that's kind of overshooting the mark now.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 months would have been good. I think 3 months, but if we knew when RLCS started after Worlds, none of us would have complained. Because the thing is, we all heard January.
Hmm.
Um, like every pro knew it was going to be January and like after Worlds, so it wasn't like, oh God, like, oh, what are we supposed to do? But we had that communication early, where it wasn't official, but it was assumed. Um, whereas when you're just kind of gambling, is it 2 3 week break? Like, what are we doing? Or 2 3 month break? Like, that's fine as long as you announce it at Worlds. Like, I think the new next plan for the next season should come out at Worlds. So then everyone can plan, okay, this is the time I'm taking for my personal off season. This is the time I can plan with the organization that contracts need to be finalized, visas need to be started, and housing needs to be invested in. And I
Yep.
can schedule when I get told the dates 3 weeks before, I now have to work with someone's school to try and get everything planned out to be like, oh, hey, we'll just have to drop you if this is that much of a problem with your school because you won't be able to fly over this much. And like that's no fault of his, but that's because of the communication.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's been the biggest thing.
you said the other buzzword that I didn't even think about with how late the Copenhagen announcement came out, which was visas. That everybody's got to work, and you're working a visa, not even knowing if you're qualified.
Hmm.
Which that's
Yeah, but
even
that's always how it's been. Like
that's true.
if you're a team in that like scenario of okay, we can make it, they message you after the second regional and start getting you set up.
That's fair.
But
That has always been like that. That's nothing new. But yeah, if you could put a 6 month turn time and get ahead of the game, like that helps and ensures that everybody will be able to make it where they need to be and not
Exactly.
issues like we've seen in the past.
I've seen, I think, Epic or whoever was kind of behind our RLCS the last few years kind of saw the writing on the wall, like the decline of things happening, and they knew they needed to make a switch. And like you said, maybe this is a transitional period for them while they try to figure out how to put things back on the upswing. And maybe it's all the esports atmosphere is kind of like this, and the economy and all the things kind of dialed this in. But do you think that they're kind of gonna listen to the community here and start communicating and moving things up into the right direction, or is this just we're gonna have to deal with this forever? You guys are gonna have to deal with this forever. The fans are gonna have to deal with this forever.
I don't see the benefit. Like if you sign a 4-year deal where you have all the commercial rates, what gain do you have pissing fans off? You know,
That's
like
true.
Totally.
or
It's
the
insane.
orgs or the people that invest or the entertainers, like they'll figure stuff out. But when you have 3 weeks to plan out a season, when people are already pissed and looking to blow stuff up, like yeah, they kind of got handed a. They were screwed.
Yeah. And hopefully it changes though, right? Like as
Yeah.
we move forward, and you know that there's this 2029 timeline. I mean, that's all Epic, right? So it could be Fortnite, it could be whatever. But they should have a plan, a roadmap to go forward. And hopefully that involves communication.
Yeah, and I mean that's Blast itself, so that's the tourney organizer planning years in advance. It's not just Epic, the game
Right.
developer.
Yeah, that's it. It has been a rough couple of months, and hopefully it does start smoothing out. And I'll be interested to see what happens going forward. But we know M80's in your heart. M80 to the top, getting to Copenhagen. Who else from NA do you expect to see there?
G2, Genji, Luminosity. I don't
Okay.
think it's possible any of those 3 bottle it with the gaps they have.
Well, we know G2 is going.
Yeah,
So Genji and Luminosity joining you guys there.
hopefully.
I'll knock on wood on that one, because that would be definitely a very good NA roster showing up to Copenhagen to try and bring it home for the
That's
NA
right.
fan base.
Gives a big chance, I think, of giving a run at least for things, and that's going to be important. In the third open qualifiers this weekend, right? Like you guys, it's just
Yeah.
back
Boom,
to
boom,
back to
boom,
back.
boom, boom.
You guys are ready. You guys are scrimming. Like, do you guys go into these weeks hitting it hard with scrims, or is it just like, all right, let's prepare. We know what we're doing. We're already here.
I mean, the only days we tend to take easier are Mondays, which we'll take off because obviously it's back to back to back. Like, you need some day in there to actually like enjoy yourself.
Mhm.
Also, this Monday, AJ's flying out, so that we automatically can't scrim. Then also Thursdays we tend to take slightly easier because we'll do prep and replays, and it's a day before a tournament. I'm not gonna kill you with 100 scrims, but then midweek Tuesday, Wednesdays we tend to take like 3 scrims a day, 4 scrims a day.
Wow,
Grinding, always on it. Gotta stay sharp though.
it's a lot of
Yeah,
Rocket League.
yeah, especially in this format, man. You can't make mistakes.
Yeah, you want to have that good momentum going into it. I think that's a really good schedule. Just thinking about it is kind of get that like, all right, take a breath, let's hit it hard, and then we'll kind of ease into and know what we're going to be doing for the weekend.
Yeah, it's killer.
Well,
Yeah.
I think this is a good stopping point. Nick, do you have any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
I think I've said my piece on a lot of stuff I wanted to complain about.
No, we appreciate it. It's good talking points, because that's kind of why we have started doing this and talking to coaches, owners, content creators, just hearing what is going on in the background, what's the scene like, and it has been a learning experience for us over the time that we have done this. So thank you very much for coming on. Where can people find you?
Mainly Twitter, Nick on RL, and obviously thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, we love it. Bucket, you got anything before we go?
Yeah, man, it was a pleasure and not disappointing at all. Just like Greg said, it was going to be because you and Jesu, so many of our former guests have said you got to have Nick on. He's so smart. He's got a lot of the information. He'll tell you straight up all those things you hit on the head for us, and that's I think what I'm going to take away from this, and that's my favorite part of this. Like, what can I take away? Is that feeling of knowing that there are people out there that are at the helm that are still trying to fight for this thing and really want to see it succeed and are willing to say and do the things that matter. So thanks for coming on, man. It was a pleasure. And as things progress for you guys, good luck. I know we'll be rooting for all the NA teams to make it, these especially these guys that we kind of look up to in the scene like you. And after you guys win it, like, you're going to come back and talk to us again.
Sure, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Thank you, everybody who listened and tuned in. We appreciate you as always, and we'll catch you guys next time. Have a good one.